Tem um momento na carreira que precisamos dar um passo além. É hora de fazer uma pós-graduação. Só que muitas vezes o custo pesa no bolso, inviabilizando tudo. Com a pós-graduação do Senac, você não tem esse problema. Cursos com até 50% de desconto e muito mais tempo para pagar. TCC opcional, modelo flexível com aulas presenciais e online e alguns cursos com apenas 12 meses de duração. Não tem mais desculpa, hein? Saiba mais em sp.senac.br/pós-graduação.
How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, S-H-O-W, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Hello, America. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the nation from Atlanta, Georgia. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you text ENGAGE to 33777, you can still get a ticket for the gathering. We got to close off registration in a couple weeks. If you use the discount code YR, if you're a young professional, you'll get a pretty significant discount on the event. Would love to see you there. It's August 8th, 9th, and 10th in Atlanta. There's a lot of stuff happening, but I got to go back to the Secret Service hearing. Right now, I do want you to know Hakeem Jeffries is speaking, saying that the Democratic caucus will be supporting Kamala Harris as the presidential nominee for the Democrats. Nancy Pelosi has come on board supporting her. No word on Barack Obama, but Kamala Harris is galvanizing support. Behind the scenes, there's still a lot of whispering that Kamala Harris is not a great candidate. But the Democrats understand they get one shot at this, and that's what they've decided to go with. So there you have it. Joe Biden still not seen anywhere. Now, I gotta spend some time on this, and I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna play you two longer pieces of audio. This isn't my. I'm not trying to abdicate my show, and one of them I played last hour. But it's really important if you're just tuning in. You got to hear this because these are not Republican voices. These are not Republicans, and in fact, because the Democrats are so vocal about the Secret Service director needing to resign, there are actually now people floating conspiracy theories that clearly something must have happened. Republicans and Democrats alike are working so well together on this issue, as opposed to the obvious answer. Democrats see what happened in Pennsylvania to Donald Trump and realize it could happen to them because it was that big of a screw up by the Secret Service. So one more time, I can't emphasize enough that Ro Khanna is one of the most progressive members of the United States Congress, and he is furious with the Secret Service director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the chair and the ranking member for convening this hearing on a bipartisan basis. I join them in condemning the horrific assassination attempt on the former president. I am relieved for the sake of the country that he wasn't seriously hurt and that he survived, and my thoughts with him and his family during such a traumatic event. I also want to express condolences to Corey Comprator's family and recognize his heroism in saving his daughter's lives, and to the victims of that awful event. Now, Director Cato, would you agree that this is the most serious security lapse since President Reagan was shot in 1981 of the Secret Service?
Yes, sir, I would.
And, do you know what Stuart Knight did when he was in charge at the time of the Secret Service? Do you know what he did afterwards?
He remained on duty.
He resigned. And Stuart Knight was not a Democratic appointee or a Republican appointee. Look, I'm not questioning your judgment. I just don't think this is partisan. If you have an assassination attempt on a president, a former president, or a candidate, you need to resign. That's what Stuart Knight did. He was a Republican appointee, and he took responsibility. And I think you need to reflect. This is not a question of you. It's a question of the American people. You cannot go leading a Secret Service agency when there is an assassination attempt on a presidential candidate. I would say that about anyone who is running. And so I guess my question to you is, what's the difference between your position and what Stuart Knight did?
What I will tell you, sir, is that I am dedicated to finding the answers to what happened. And like every Secret Service agent, we don't shirk our responsibilities. I will remain on and be responsible to the agency, to this committee, to the former president, and to the American public.
But is there a reason you wouldn't just do what Stuart Knight did after the Reagan assassination attempt?
I believe that I provided an answer.
There's nothing more that you have to say? I mean, do you really believe at this moment, given how divided the country is and the questions asked, that your service in this role is the best for the nation? I mean, I'm not saying you can't do public service again, you can't do something else again. Do you really genuinely in your heart believe that you being in this role is what's right for America at this moment? I mean, do you think there are people who are Trump supporters who have confidence in you? The one thing that we've got to have agencies in this country that are transcend politics, that have the confidence of independents, Democrats, Republicans, progressives, conservatives. Do you really believe that the majority of this country has confidence in you right now?
I believe that the country deserves answers, and I am committed to finding those answers and providing those answers.
Well, look, I believe, Director Schittle, that you should resign. I think there are colleagues on both sides of the aisle who believe that, and I hope you'll consider it.
That's Ro Khanna, one of the most progressive members of Congress. Now, who is Stuart Knight? You should understand this. Stuart Knight was the head of the Secret Service. Director Cheadle is right to a degree. Ronald Reagan, the attempted assassination on Reagan was in March of 1981. And Stuart Knight stayed in his position until November of 1981, but made it very clear that he would begin transitioning out of office after that assassination attempt. Stuart Knight joined the Secret Service in 1951. He oversaw security for Harry Truman, for Dwight Eisenhower, and for John Kennedy. Richard Nixon was in Venezuela in 1958, and Stuart Knight was on motorcade duty for Richard Nixon and protected Nixon when Nixon's motorcade came under attack. He led the Special Investigations Department in 1963 and helped investigate the assassination of John Kennedy. Lyndon Johnson felt so safe with Stuart Knight that he insisted Stuart Knight accompany him on every trip he took. He then took a break from presidential detail and worked on counterfeit money cases around the country. And then he headed into the directorship position. In 1971, he was an assistant director and then became director in 1973. Stuart Knight, at the desk as director, was involved with attempted assassination attempts twice on Gerald Ford in 1975. Jimmy Carter actually confirmed him as director in 1980. Ronald Reagan kept him on in that position. And during the Reagan assassination attempt, one of the issues was lines of sight that were not covered. And Stuart Knight decided to resign because of that failure. He owned it to Congress, apologized for it, did not resign immediately, but said he would begin his transition out of the department. Director Cheadle, the current head of the Secret Service, is refusing to even say she will begin her walk out the door. By the way, something else about Stuart Knight you should know. In 1984, Stuart Knight was offered an obscene amount of money to write a memoir. He had been with presidential protection in the Secret Service since 1951, since Harry Truman. He had been in charge of Secret Service operations investigating the assassination of John F. Kennedy, had been in the directorship position during assassination attempts on Ford, had protected Richard Nixon personally in Venezuela in the 1950s, had overseen presidential travel trips to the Middle East in the 1970s. He was offered an obscene amount of money, would have made him a very wealthy man. And Stuart Knight said no, he would not breach the trust he had with the presidents of the United States. Director Cheadle is no Stuart Knight, and we need a Stuart Knight. Now, I want to play you Jared Moskowitz now. Jared Moskowitz is another Democrat. Jared Moskowitz is from Florida. Jared Moskowitz doesn't like Donald Trump. Not a big Ron DeSantis fan either. Tell you what Moskowitz really doesn't like, this director of the Secret Service.
Director, I just want to give you an honest assessment of how this is going for you today. Did you happen to catch the hearing many months ago in education where there were a bunch of university presidents and Elise Stefanik asked a very easy question and couldn't get an answer? Did you see that hearing?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay, well, let me tell you, it didn't go well, and the short end of that story was those university professors all resigned. They're gone. That's how this is going for you. This is where this is headed, okay? This is, I don't know who prepared you for this. I don't know how many times you've testified in front of Congress, but a president was almost assassinated live on television, not just for Americans, but for the world to see. And this being your first opportunity, I understand there's an ongoing investigation. I understand there's things that you can not talk about. But the idea that we're getting less than you did on television is something that Democrats, Independents, or Republicans are going to find unacceptable. My high school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, was on the list of mass shootings that Representative Raskin held up. That very day, the school resource officer, a police officer, did not run into the building. He hid in the stairwell while the shooter was in the building. He stayed outside, never helped. Okay. He also directed other officers who showed up on the scene not to go into the building. When it was determined that the failures in response and training and that the sheriff fired nobody in his agency, Governor DeSantis then removed that sheriff. I supported the removal. So here's my question. You said there's going to be accountability. I understand you don't want to give us names. When you say that, are you telling the committee that once it's concluded, you're prepared to fire the people on the ground who made poor decisions that day?
I'm prepared to take the actions necessary.
No, that's nonsense. Okay. Accountability. The failure was human. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It means they failed that day, and a former president was almost assassinated. Okay. Are you prepared to fire the human failure on the ground? Yes or no? When you have the names of where those failures were, they're people. It's not like a piece of technology failed. It was people who failed that day. Are you prepared to fire them?
I don't have an answer as to whether
Well, then how can there be accountability if you're not prepared to fire someone? And the reason why your name is going to be the person who's held accountable, the reason why members in this committee are calling for resignation, and I join in that, or for the president to fire you, is because you're saying there's going to be accountability, but you can't commit that people are going to get fired. Let me ask this question a different way. If Trump had been assassinated that day, if the gunman had succeeded, okay, would you have come and tendered your resignation?
I would still be sitting here because I would want to ensure the integrity of the investigation.
Totally understand. That's a fair answer, that you would have set up that process. But would you have had the honor to come in front of the committee and say, former president was assassinated on my watch, there should be new leadership?
I think that I have admitted that there was
No, that's what I'm asking. Would you have tendered your resignation if he had been killed?
That occurred.
Those are Democrats. That doesn't even begin to get to the Republicans. The Democrats know this could happen to their side, too. They want competence in the Secret Service. What is remarkable is that the President of the United States will not fire this woman. That's the most remarkable point after all of this. She has job security unless something changes with Joe Biden. This is a question for Kamala Harris.
Você ama ter mais flexibilidade para estudar? Use a sua nota do Enem e venha para Anhembi Morumbi. Aqui você pode escolher qual modalidade se adapta melhor à sua rotina. Presencial, semipresencial ou ensino à distância. Tudo com uma metodologia inovadora e prática desde o início do curso. Descubra por que milhares de alunos amam estudar aqui. Acesse anhembi.br e garanta a sua vaga mesmo antes do Enem. Anhembi Morumbi. Aqui tudo acontece.
Hello there, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number, 877-973-7425. You know, on top of everything else going on around here, Benjamin Netanyahu is going to address Congress on Wednesday. The vice president has declined to be present. Patty Murray, the president pro tem of the Senate, has declined to be present. So the Senate's trying to figure out who's going to preside in the joint meeting of Congress with the Speaker of the House for the Netanyahu speech, and the anti-Semites in the Senate are having all sorts of problems. Oh, and by the way, we've got to get into the anti-Semitism issue when we come back because it involves Josh Shapiro, the would-be vice presidential nominee. But while all of that is going on, something else is going on, and this goes to the CrowdStrike. Except it's no longer CrowdStrike. This is a Delta Airlines problem. And y'all know I love Delta until I can afford to fly priority jet and be private so I don't see you people in the bathroom at the airport. I fly Delta, but they have canceled twice as many flights on Friday, 4,500 and counting, as they did in the entirety of 2019, the year before COVID. They canceled 1,800 flights in 2019. And since Friday, they've canceled 4,500 flights because of the tech issues collapsing after the CrowdStrike situation on Friday. Then, by the way, all the other airlines that have had problems with CrowdStrike, they've mostly recovered. Delta has had a cascading series of technological errors. I've heard from friends of mine who are pilots for Delta that there are staff shortages. They're having to fly planes and turn around and come back. There are flight attendant shortages. There are pilot shortages. The staffing issues have been exacerbated by everything. I'm supposed to be on a flight on Friday, and I'm assuming it'll be resolved by Friday, so I'll be able to make my flight. But my goodness gracious, Delta Airlines is just in a nightmare. They've got 600 flights grounded on Monday because of the shortages, and the social media stories people are putting up are just nightmare for the airline, which has otherwise had great customer service over the years. It's a great airline. Look, I like Delta. I fly it more than any other airline. They're good people. They're great flight attendants and staff. The pilots are amazing, but gosh, they're having all sorts of problems right now. Look, you may be having a problem, and that problem may be your kid's education. Can I recommend Hillsdale College to you? If you go to ericforhillsdale.com, they're a great nonprofit to support. They're a 501c3. They are doing elementary and secondary education around the country that schools can adopt their classical education curriculum. By the way, it's actually a fantastic curriculum, and it's very pro-America, pro-true history of the country, not the revisionist garbage that some people are selling. Hillsdale is fantastic. They're a great nonprofit. Your donation to Hillsdale College is tax deductible. You can go to Eric, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com, and you can find out so much about Hillsdale College there. Their classical education at the elementary and secondary level, they teach their college students how to debate. They teach them logic and reasoning. Every student who goes to Hillsdale College is brilliant. I've met a lot of them. Some of them are very dear friends of mine. EricForHillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K. This is a nonprofit institution that you can support as a legacy to build the brighter minds of a future America. EricForHillsdale.com.
Ideal mesmo para o mundo atual seria fazer o ensino médio junto com o curso técnico, certo? É no Senac que o aluno tem autonomia de verdade, formação cidadã, foco na diversidade, preparação para o Enem, material didático sem taxas e muito mais. Na real, tem tudo que você precisa para se sentir preparado para a vida. Seja para entrar no mundo do trabalho ou te ajudar a decidir o que fazer na faculdade. Quer saber? Senac. Vem comigo. Acesse sp.senac.br/ensino-médio-técnico.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, we must now discuss the vice presidential picks for Kamala Harris. I want to say what I find most notable about so many conversations in the media these days now is the herd mentality, where it's just remarkable how everyone parrots the same list, which suggests to me the conversation's been going on for some time. My personal theory is that Kamala Harris herself was involved in the conversations to push Joe Biden aside. I think it's notable she had a list of journalists, a group of journalists at her home. A while back, the list was produced. Ezra Klein was there from the New York Times, one of the chief proponents of tossing Joe Biden. He's been beating the drum for a while. In fact, pretty much every journalist who met with Kamala Harris at her house has been on the get rid of Joe Biden bandwagon, and she is meeting her moment. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that we're all hearing the same buzzy list of people who could be a vice presidential nominee. What I find remarkable, however, is a comment made by John King. And you should know, John King is a friend. I got my start on CNN on his program, John King USA at Night. The program did not last, but it was a good program, and I enjoyed being on with John King. He's a good guy. He has a very keen sense of politics. And he said something that raised eyebrows, and he's getting attacked for saying it, but John King is telling the truth. I will let you listen to it. This is his conversation with Anderson Cooper on CNN.
Pennsylvania's Governor Josh Shapiro is being discussed as one of Harris's potential running mates. He also endorsed her tonight. In your view, what are the pros and cons for putting him on the ticket?
Well, he's certainly under consideration. I know that from key Harris allies. He's a first-term governor. He's Jewish. There could be some risks in putting him on the ticket, but certainly some of our voters here in Pennsylvania said, hey, we like Governor Shapiro, give him a look. Also told Anderson that some other governors, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, are on the list of the Harris team. One Harris ally told me today they hope to get her within a few days, assuming her path to the nomination continues to look good, and it does tonight, but we still have some question marks. They hope to get her a list, they say within several days to a week, of 4 or 5 names for her to pick from.
Now, it's his comment that he's Jewish. There could be problems putting him on. He's right. The Democrats are going through a very anti-Semitic moment nationwide. It is progressive activists who are blocking Jewish students in colleges from libraries. They've taken back over that Hamilton building on Columbia's campus. They are not going to go for having a Jewish vice president who has not just strong ties to Israel, but Josh Shapiro doesn't campaign on Saturdays because he's Jewish. Joe Lieberman was the same way with Al Gore in the year 2000. Josh Shapiro won't campaign on Saturdays. He takes his faith seriously. Whether you like him or not as a Democratic politician, and he's a liberal Democrat, he takes his Jewish faith seriously. He's got electoral college votes, though, 19 of them in Pennsylvania. He would put that on the board. But he could be very disruptive to the anti-Semites in the Democratic Party. If I had to pick, and I don't know, I have no insider knowledge, but Roy Cooper of North Carolina is probably the one I'd keep my eye on because governors matter in this, and Kamala Harris is going to want someone who can help her with demographics of voters she can't otherwise get. And Roy Cooper is a Southern Democrat who has won repeatedly in a state that has trended Republican. His state has 16 electoral college votes, and he and Kamala Harris were attorneys general. They worked together when he was the attorney general of North Carolina before becoming governor, and she was the attorney general in California. In fact, Kamala Harris has mentioned in the past they had somewhat of a mentor relationship where he helped her learn how to steer bureaucracy the way she wanted it. So I would keep my eye on Roy Cooper. Andy Beshear is another one. Beshear is the governor of Kentucky. he could be an interesting play against J.D. Vance. Democrats have been circulating a video of Andy Beshear today, essentially saying that that J.D. Vance ain't one of us. Now, you should know that J.D. Vance's family was dirt poor. He grew up in poverty, and Andy Beshear is from a political dynasty, a wealthy political dynasty in Kentucky. So to say he ain't one of us when he grew up dirt poor in Kentucky and Andy Beshear grew up with a silver foot in his mouth is a little bit rich coming from Beshear. He would love to be vice president. It's his only path forward out of Kentucky. Mark Kelly is listen, I realize that I'm overweight and people tell me all the time, you're fat, shut up. But Mark Kelly looks like an overweight Gollum. I don't know that he does very well on the campaign stage nationwide, talking about his precious Kamala Harris. I don't think so. He's an astronaut, interesting biography, husband to Gabby Giffords, became a anti-gun activist. That may play well with the progressive base. But I don't know that Democrats want to be that destabilized in Arizona with giving up Mark Kelly. If he won, you'd have to have an appointment there. It would cause problems with that whole campaign situation, with Carrie Lake also running against Ruben Galeo out there. I don't know. Mark Kelly also being a senator, it's just different. Kamala Harris and Barack Obama both found that out, and Hillary Clinton, for that matter, running from the Senate for the presidency. It's not quite the same thing, and I'm not sure he would be a smart pick. Gretchen Whitmer, I don't know that having two women running for office at this point is wise. You can say it's sexist to say this, but even the women I know are already making jokes about Kamala Harris and Gretchen Whitmer being catty if they were on a ticket together. I've already seen it on social media among women that, and Gretchen Whitmer doesn't come across well. She comes across great to Democrats. I just don't think she comes across great to other people. I think Shapiro and Beshear and Cooper make the most sense. I think Beshear doesn't give you Kentucky. Kentucky's not going to vote Democrat just because Beshear's on there, but he would be someone to stack up against J.D. Vance. There's a side note here that I just think needs to be said. And it's come up not from me. I only say it because I'm in these email groups and text message chains with some of these Republican consultants, and they're all starting to lament that Donald Trump picked J.D. Vance. That there's no coalition building there. It's legacy building for him. You thought Biden was going to be the nominee. It was a cocky pick. I like J.D. Vance, just so you know. I'm on the record saying I do think that you could have broadened the coalition with a Glenn Youngkin or Rubio, but for the constitutional problems, or Tim Scott, that J.D. Vance gives you legacy and a MAGA true believer, and that's really what you want when you want to defend your policies. You get him to give intellectual firepower so that the policies don't create problems for you. He's very sharp. He's very thoughtful. He's quick on his feet. He'll be great in debates. He would have been brilliant in a debate against Kamala Harris, and now that won't be. But there are Republicans lamenting that. I kind of think that, oh, and by the way, Tim Walz is the governor of Minnesota. There are a number of Democrats saying that because Joe Biden put it in play, Kamala Harris should go with him. I think that's dumb. Minnesota's not going to go for Donald Trump. Let me just put it that way. It's not going to go for Donald Trump. So why put a governor on, or J.D. Pritzker of Illinois? Illinois is not going to go for Donald Trump. 40% of the population of that state lives in Chicago. They turn out overwhelmingly and dominate. Pritzker in Illinois is going to go Democrat. You want to, like Donald Trump should have done, where can you get some coalition markers? Pennsylvania is a swing state with 19 electoral college votes. And Donald Trump has more paths to 270 than Kamala Harris. Donald Trump doesn't need Michigan or Wisconsin. Based on public opinion polling right now, in fact, let me go to 270 to win, which is a great website. Based on polling right now, Donald Trump has North Carolina and Georgia. If Donald Trump wins Arizona and Nevada, he's at 268 electoral college votes. So all he needs is Wisconsin, Michigan, or Pennsylvania. That's it. If he wins Pennsylvania, he gets 287 electoral college votes. If he sweeps all of the swing states, he gets 312. I would, if I were Kamala Harris, you pick Pennsylvania, you're at 245 electoral college votes. The odds are Josh Shapiro could help her win Pennsylvania. That complicates the math for the Republicans more than any other state. If you get Pennsylvania, you've got to win either Michigan or Wisconsin, and you absolutely have to win Nevada and Arizona. If you get Pennsylvania and Arizona, you're at 281. You can lose Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan. If you get Pennsylvania, you can win Nevada and lose Arizona, Wisconsin, and Michigan. If you get Pennsylvania, if you're Republicans, your paths to victory are through any of the remaining 4 states, assuming Georgia and North Carolina go for Donald Trump. We haven't even gotten into New Hampshire, which could go Republican. But if you're a Democrat, if you don't win Pennsylvania, based on the lay of the land right now, if you don't win Pennsylvania, you lose. Because if Trump does win Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, that's 270 votes right there. That's all he needs, 270. So if Kamala Harris were to sweep Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada, Donald Trump wins. If, however, Kamala Harris wins Pennsylvania, Donald Trump's got to get Arizona, he's got to get Nevada, and then he's still got to win one of Michigan or Wisconsin. It makes sense to go with Josh Shapiro. But it really is striking to me that there are behind-the-scenes concerns that Josh Shapiro's Jewishness could alienate Democratic voters. That's kind of wild, actually. But this is the age we live in, where the Democrats are being overwhelmed with anti-Semitism, not just at their base, but even among Democrats on Capitol Hill, the progressives, the Rashida Tlaibs, the Ilhan Omars, the Ayanna Presleys, the AOCs. You pick a Jewish vice presidential candidate who cannot campaign on a Saturday because of his religion. And the Democrats, I mean, that's their easiest path to victory is Josh Shapiro and his ground game in Pennsylvania, which he'll still work for them. But there's a difference between working for them and being on the team. And I don't know that he even wants it. But if you can't get him, maybe try to get North Carolina. It's got 16 as opposed to 19 votes. You still have an easier path. I don't think Mark Kelly gives you Arizona. I think Roy Cooper knows how to win North Carolina. Josh Shapiro knows how to win Pennsylvania. But the fact that the Democrats, I mean, this is her choice. Andy Beshear in Kentucky doesn't give you anything. It's going to come down to a working relationship, though, that Kamala Harris has to have with one of these people. And she can have a working relationship with anyone. The question is, who does she actually like? We have a history of Democrats undercutting their vice presidential candidates. It's kind of wild, actually, that on the Republican side, the president and vice presidential team tend to get along. Up until the end, Pence and Trump got along fairly well. Cheney and Bush, of course, got along great. Bush and Quayle got along very well, meeting regularly at the White House. Bush and Reagan got along famously. Democrats, however, have never seemed to get along all that well. Clinton and Gore did at first and then drifted apart. Obama and Biden got along well, but there was distance there. And now you've got Biden and Harris. It's kind of interesting to watch that dynamic play out. She's going to want someone she can campaign with and spend a lot of time with, who she can, as we would say in the South, G-haul with. And I don't know that she's going to find that person quickly, and she's got to make a decision. She only got 3 weeks until the convention. Now, while all this is happening, you've got Americans for Prosperity leading a massive ground game out there, the largest grassroots organization in the United States, and they would love to have you be a part of it. If you go to americansforprosperity.org, you can sign up with them. Around the country, Americans for Prosperity trains conservatives to be great grassroots activists and also educates you on the issues conservatives care about, on school choice, on deregulation, on tax reform, on parental rights, on education, on immigration. Around the country, Americans for Prosperity has been fighting for free markets and free people. They've been fighting to release the regulatory burdens on small businesses. They've been fighting for school choice. They would love to have you on their side. They'd love to get you educated on the issues and train you to be a great grassroots activist before November hits. Get you out there, knocking on doors, talking to your neighbors about the issues, getting your neighbors to be engaged. The data shows that people who are willing to touch base with their neighbors and get them involved can tend to get their neighbors out there on their side. It's one of the things Americans for Prosperity likes to do, turn you into a great activist. Go to americansforprosperity.org today. americansforprosperity.org. They're not just the largest grassroots organization in the country, they're the leading grassroots organization in the country for a reason. americansforprosperity.org.
Esse podcast é um oferecimento de Samsung Galaxy AI. E sabe o que mais ele te oferece? Que tal uma nova maneira de buscar na internet a partir de fotos ou do que está na sua tela? Fácil, fácil. Viu? Circulou? Encontrou. Ou quem sabe um assistente de notas para gravar reuniões, transcrever gravações e organizar, produzindo resumos eficientes. Tem tanta coisa que o Samsung Galaxy AI pode fazer por você. Clique aí no banner para descobrir o que. Galaxy AI, a inteligência artificial nas suas mãos.
Hello there, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States of America. Glad to have you with me. I need to make an important point. Need you to follow along with me here. Lloyd Austin is the Secretary of Defense. He disappeared for a week without telling anyone in the middle of the crisis, not just in Israel, but in the Red Sea against the Houthi. His own Assistant Secretary of Defense did not know that he was incapacitated. Didn't tell anybody he was going out. Joe Biden did not fire Lloyd Austin. Lloyd Austin did not resign. The head of the Secret Service presided over the first assassination attempt on a president since Ronald Reagan. Donald Trump came within a half inch of dying. The Secret Service director, despite bipartisan calls, refuses to resign, and Joe Biden will not fire her. He still says he has confidence in her. 8 men from Turkmenistan who have ties to ISIS came into this country illegally through an open and unsecured southern border, plotting a terrorist attack in this country. The director of Homeland Security, still there. The Secretary of Homeland Security still on the job, despite this massive wave of illegal immigrants coming across the border, including terrorists. Men fell from the sky to their deaths as planes took off from Kabul's airport during a botched retreat, handing that country back to the Taliban. 13 American soldiers died. Joe Biden says it was a perfect mission. No one was held accountable for the deaths of American soldiers. No one was held accountable for that botched operation. No one was held accountable. No one was held accountable for the botched Afghanistan retreat, handing it back to the Taliban. No one was held accountable for Lloyd Austin disappearing from the job without telling anyone, including the President of the United States. No one's been held responsible for the border situation, allowing terrorists into this country, some of whom have been arrested, some of whom are still plotting. No one has been held responsible for an attempted assassination on a president of the United States for the first time since 1981. The only person in the Biden administration who has been shoved out for incompetence is Joe Biden himself, by a gang of Democrats who realize they got to shove him out the door to win the election, and yet they won't shove out the door any of these other people who have been staggeringly incompetent and have proven that they should be fired. It's remarkable.